everyone, welcome to Study Buddy Homeschooling. In today's session, we'll be seeing sexual reproduction in human beings. So what is meant by sexual reproduction? In sexual reproduction, there are two parents involved, one male and one female. The male releases sperm cells and the female ovum. So the fusion of sperm cells and ovum leads to the formation of zygote, which eventually leads to the growth of embryo. So lots of changes happens in the bodies of boys and girls when they reach the age of adolescence. In the boys, suddenly they seem to be growing taller, they seem to be growing mustaches, and their voice box or the larynx enlarges, their voice cracks also. In girls also there are certain changes seen. They also seem to be growing taller, their bodies get more curvaceous, and they can see the increased sizes of their breasts. So these changes are very gradual, which takes over years to prepare the bodies for reproduction. Let's see the male reproductive system. You can see the picture of the male reproductive system here. Let's divide them into external and internal. Externally, there are two parts. The bag-like structure, what you see is the scrotum. It contains a pair of testicles. So you have scrotum here, which is a sac-like structure, and there's another external organ which is known as the penis. It is through penis that the sperms are ejaculated out. So moving to the internal organs, we saw that there is scrotum here externally. Internally, there is a pair of testes. So this is the testis you can see here, which actually produces the sperm cells. This testis is covered by a long coiled structure known as epididymis. This white part is known as epididymis, where the sperms mature. So this testis is connected to epididymis, and epididymis is connected to a long muscular tube known as vas deferens. So this vas deferens is connected to a tube from the urinary bladder. So this vas deferens and tube from urinary bladder are connected through urethra. So these are internally. So now let's see how exactly the sperms are formed and how they are carried out. So testis is a very important organ. It's a actual male part. So there is a pair of testes inside the scrotum. If you see, the testis and the scrotum is outside the body. So for the sperms to be formed, the temperature should be 2 to 3 degrees lesser than the body temperature. That's why the scrotum is placed outside of the body. Only at the temperatures 2 to 3 degrees lesser than the body temperature, sperms are formed effectively. So sperm cells are formed here in the testis, and they travel to epididymis. This white part is known as epididymis, where they get matured. From the epididymis, the matured sperms travel through a long muscular tube known as vas deferens. You can see there are two glands present here. One is a seminal vesicle and prostate gland here. These two glands are very important. How are they important? They produce some liquids which help in the smooth mobility of the sperms, as well as they provide nourishment to the sperm for it to travel from testis till the female organ. So seminal vesicles and prostate glands help in the mobility of the sperms, as well as provide them with the essential nutrients. So now the sperms which are produced in the testis, they get matured in epididymis, and the sperms travel through this tube, vas deferens, and in the process there are secretions made by seminal vesicles and prostate gland, which helps the sperms to move smoothly and also give them energy to travel through, and here it reaches here. You have to remember that the urethra is a common passage for both urine as well as semen. Sperms. Semen is a white fluid which contains millions of sperms. It's through urethra and the penis, which is the external organ, that the semen is ejaculated out. Semen with millions of sperms ejaculated out during intercourse. You have to remember that testosterone is a hormone which helps in the formation of sperm cells in the testis. Now let's see the structure of a human sperm cell. This is how a human sperm cell looks like. It has a head-like structure, and there's a neck here and the middle piece. The head-like structure contains lots of enzymes, which is also called as acrosome. This acrosome has lots of enzymes for it to pierce through the ovum or the egg cell. And there is this nucleus which contains a male cell, the DNA from the males. And you have the neck here, and there's this middle part full of mitochondria. It is this mitochondria which helps the sperm to travel to such long distances. It provides the energy for the sperm to travel. So if you see, the human sperm cell measures about 0.005 centimeter. That's too small. So for such a small cell, tiny cell, for it to travel from testis to the fallopian tube of the females is a huge task. It's like crossing oceans. So it needs energy to travel. So this energy is provided by the mitochondria of the sperm as well as the secretions from the seminal vesicles and the prostate glands. Now let's see the female reproductive system. This is the image of a female reproductive system. Let's go through the parts before we go into the process. So female reproductive system has a pair of ovary. There is a pair of ovary and which is attached to what is known as fallopian tube. This is the fallopian tube or oviduct. So there's a pair of ovary and a pair of fallopian tubes. So this fallopian tube is connected to uterus. Uterus is a very important part. This is where the embryo gets attached itself. So the lower part of the uterus is known as cervix. And here you have vagina. Cervix leads to vagina. Vagina is connected to the external genitals. So cervix basically connects vagina to the uterus. So sperms during intercourse enter through vagina, gets into the cervix and reaches the fallopian tube. Now let's see what exactly the process happens. So every month what happens is this ovary releases an egg. When a baby girl is born, the baby would have ovaries but with millions of eggs, thousands of eggs which are not mature. But when the girl reaches a reproductive age of about 12-13, when the girl reaches maturity, every month one egg from each of the ovary, either of the ovary starts maturing out. Once they mature out, what they do is they come out of the ovary and they wait at the fallopian tube, either here or here. One ovum or one egg per month. They just break out after maturity. Till maturity nothing happens. The eggs are not thousands of eggs in each ovary. They are still there. They don't mature out. But when the girl reaches maturity, one egg breaks out, matures every month and it comes out of ovary and waits at the fallopian tube. Now what happens is during intercourse, if a sperm is able to reach here and if it reaches fallopian tube, fertilization occurs here. So you have to remember that fertilization of ovum and sperm occurs in the fallopian tube. So the sperm has to travel all the way till the fallopian tube. So if fertilization happens, the first cell which is formed is known as zygote. This zygote starts dividing into number of cells known as embryo. Now these embryo starts coming down and meanwhile a bed is prepared in the uterus. A uteral lining is made for the embryo to attach itself to the uterus. So after fertilization, the embryo reaches the uterus and attaches itself to the uteral lining. Now what happens is the growing embryo needs energy, right? Where does it get the energy from? It gets the energy from placenta, which is a disc-shaped structure attached to the uteral lining. This placenta is supplied with number of villi with numerous blood vessels. So through these blood vessels, oxygen and nutrients reach the growing embryo. Now as the embryo grows into fetus, lots of waste materials also release, right? So these materials enter the mother's bloodstream through placenta only. So it's a placenta which plays a very important role in supplying the nutrients to the growing embryo from the mother. This is how fertilization happens in the female reproductive system. Ovary releases ovum. Every month one egg which waits at the fallopian tube. If by chance sperm comes around that time, the fertilized fusion of sperm and the ovum, that is fertilization, happens at the fallopian tube, and the zygote divides into embryo, and this embryo travels to the uterus and attaches itself to the uterine lining, and placenta supplies all the nutrients to the growing embryo. In case the sperm is not coming and fertilization is not happening, what happens? Let's see that. In case the ovum is released, it waits there for a day or two and sperms don't come in. What happens is these ovum travel to the uterus and they just disintegrate themselves. This process, and what happens is blood shedding happens in females every month. This process of monthly cycle of shedding of blood from the vagina is known as menstruation. It is pronounced as menstruation. It is also known as periods. The first day of the blood flow is known as day 1. So, females generally go through this bleeding process for 4 to 7 days. It depends. So, complete blood shedding happens during 4 to 7 days. So, let's take the first day of periods as day 1. On an average, on every 14th day, this could be plus or minus 2. It varies among females. So on every 14th day on an average, the ovary, either of the ovary releases an ovum. So on the 14th day, for an example, I'm telling you, it releases an ovum. It just comes and waits here at the fallopian tube. It will wait for a day or two. During that time, if by chance the sperm comes in, fertilization happens and embedding happens. If it doesn't come, so 14th day, 15th day it will wait, 16th day it will start traveling here and it will disintegrate itself. So this, and after 14 days from the day of ovulation, the uterine lining starts disintegrating itself and it just flows as a menstrual flow. So you'll have to remember that the first day of periods is considered day 1, and on 14th day or 15th day ovulation happens. That's when ovum is released, and 14 days from ovulation this disintegration of uterine lining happens. So totally 14 plus another 14, 28 days. After 28 days again the menstrual flow starts in case the sperm doesn't reach. So this cycle continues. So if a female has to get pregnant, her window is very narrow, which means from 14th to 16th day of her periods only she can conceive. So this process of breaking of the uterine lining and leading to the blood flow is known as menstrual flow. Thanks for watching. If you have any doubts, you can leave your comments in the comment section. Thank you.